Hello there and welcome. This is episode 17, and we are talking about how to know whether a Salesforce career is right for you and some ways to evaluate whether it's a good fit. We talk a little bit about the market, where we've come, where we are, and likely where we're going. And this is also the first of many future elements where I'll just be speaking to you and helping you on your Salesforce journey. Please follow us on socials, as we'll have lots more information like this to help you grow in 2025 and beyond. Thanks so much for listening. Welcome to another episode of Salesforce Trails and Trials. Today, we're going to talk about evaluating a Salesforce career. What are the things that you should think through as you look to enter this potential market? Where have we come from? Where are we today? Where are we going? And what are the things that you can think through to see if this is a good fit for you? Obviously, I'm a fan. I've been in the ecosystem now for almost 24 years, and it's been a life changer for me. I've loved it, but I'm also a very unique kind of person. I understand that I'm different than many other people, and some of those differences make it very, very beneficial to work with a platform like Salesforce. So my goal today is not to convince you to be part of Salesforce ecosystem, to be part of this ecosystem and to become a Salesforce professional. My goal today is to help you understand what considerations you should think through and what paradigms you should kind of consider when making a potential jump from your current career into a Salesforce career. Now, certainly there are many, many great trailblazer stories, and I've been part of many. Some that have come through my Salesforce Experience Academy have won golden hoodies and become Trailblazer of the Year. That's beautiful, but many of those stories won't necessarily give you the tools so that you can think through for yourself whether this would be a good choice. And also, I'm going to give you some tips on how to kind of toe in so you don't have to go all in, and you can validate whether these aspects are good for you or not. So before we start, let's talk a little bit about how did we get here. So for example, Salesforce started out and they were a sales platform, but right away in the beginning, they decided that we're going to make the admin, the customization components of this tool as important as the front-end user experience. That was very unique for the time. And so they began essentially creating two products. One is the front end that you or any given customer or user would experience when going through and managing leads, opportunities, contacts, accounts. Those were the aspects in the beginning. That was one product. The second product was the back end, the admin area that is going to enable creating objects, fields, validation rules, S controls, and lots of other components that have now passed on. But that's a second product, which is how do we enable and democratize the customization of this tool out in the marketplace. That was very unique and essentially set Salesforce up to focus on a particular type of person. So if you think about the type of person, it isn't necessarily the highly technical folks, the ones who, for example, loved code and they wanted to do kind of developer-focused solutions, and they want to build out elements and go straight to the database, straight to the tables, straight to those views. That wasn't the target market they were going for. They were going for a user who, rather an admin, who knows, yes, I got to understand the technology here. I need to understand how this works, but I also need to be skilled in understanding the business process, understanding key aspects about, what is the product? What are the politics, right? Who are the people? And what do they need? Those elements are just as or more important than the technical components because Salesforce was looking to cover many of those dimensions. So that's a key element as it starts to shape out who is going to be the right person for the Salesforce role as they kind of put together this. In fact, Salesforce was anti-software. Their slogan was no software in the sense of installable software. And many of the professionals at the time were people working on Microsoft, even PeopleSoft, right? There's a lot of these tools that were installable, and so Salesforce kind of took a very different position there. And Salesforce baked in a lot of elements. So for example, by conflating the database, security, and kind of schema layers, they made it so you didn't have to develop a way to log in. You didn't have to develop how to interface with the database. You didn't have to develop a lot of these things that on typical applications you did. Even with reporting, for example, you didn't have to develop how you're going to put things together in a report, etc. They included that in the baseline application. So just an aspect of how we got here, Salesforce positioned themselves as being very different, no software, and really focused on gathering people who didn't have to be super technical to be participants in their ecosystem and support their growing platform and market share. And the key also is the key second product of putting the admin area up front and making it just as important as the front-end UX for the users, which created space for Salesforce professionals to dive in there and become part of supporting these projects. So let's talk about what do things look like now. So some highlights. The ecosystem has grown significantly. Salesforce has been at or just below 22% in market share in CRM since 2023. And there's about 173,000 Salesforce certified professionals out there as of late last year. I don't have new numbers for 2024, although I know there's a lot of certifications that have gone out this year, and so that number is definitely higher. One key element, though, is from last year to this year was the first time that supply outweighed demand in the Salesforce marketplace. So the market for Salesforce professionals is becoming a bit tighter, meaning there's competition now for roles because there are more people vying for the same role than there used to be. Now let's look forward a little bit on where we're going. The global CRM market was valued at $91 billion in 2023, and that's proposed to grow to $262 billion by 2032. Now that's good news. That's the total addressable market. So if we think about Salesforce having 22% market share today, that's 22% of that 90 billion. Well, now if that market is going to grow to 262 billion over the next 7 years, well, that means there's a ton more opportunity to gain more market share, which creates more opportunities for Salesforce professionals like me and potentially like you. A 2021 IDC study found that the Salesforce economy will create 9.3 million jobs by 2026. Now, we're already halfway through that, and certainly we've seen a little bit of slowdown there, but that may really pick up over the next several years. And so that's good news. Lots more opportunities there, but definitely many people vying for many of those opportunities. And a key dimension that's really come about in the last 4 years is the impact of AI on these roles. And I call it role erosion, in that AI will continue to eat away at specific aspects of all Salesforce roles. Some will be impacted more than others. For example, the developer role will be impacted initially much, much more than other roles because of the nature of writing within a structured programming language. AI will be able to pick up and produce code and do robotic testing against that code much more quickly than handling other unstructured, or you might call it intangible dimensions or people-first components of the Salesforce role, which is what we'll get a little bit more into later. Now, let's talk through a bit of the paradigms that you might want to think through as you consider a Salesforce position. And I'm saying this at the end of the year because many people are thinking about, do they want to stay in the same role for the next year? Do they want to complement that role, maybe have a side hustle that they can start up, something that maybe offers more flexibility, the ability to move into another state, the ability to work remotely. There's lots of concerns as people start families. And so let's talk through some of those dimensions. So the first one I like to think through, and many of these come with my experience over the last 15 years. I also run a Salesforce Experience Academy, which helps people who want to go a little further in discovering whether Salesforce is right for them. They can actually go through and get real projects and essentially be put under the true duress of a real project, even though they're not actually working for a client, and to see if this is really something they like, and they get some feedback from their peers. And ultimately, that can lead to either validating that this isn't a good fit for them, which is really good news because they can pursue something else, or they find that this is something that I would like to do, and they can go through the process of graduating either into one of our commercial teams or with one of our commercial partners that loves to hire our graduates. So for more information on that, feel free to send me a DM and go to our socials, however you'd like. But let's talk through these paradigms which come from our experience there with hundreds and hundreds of consultants over the years. The first one is thinking about you as a person. Thinking about, do you like environments that are changing, they're evolving, that they require consistent learning from you? Or would you rather have an environment that you're more stable and things are pretty consistent, that you are able to follow a pretty consistent process on a regular basis, and you can maybe, vary a little bit based on who you're talking to, but you really like it to be stable? I would suggest that those that are a well fit for the Salesforce ecosystem are those that have a bit more of a bent towards the changing environment. That there's, 400 pages of Salesforce release notes that come out 3 times a year. If you see that and you're excited to learn what's in there, Salesforce might be a good fit for you. If you get a new cell phone and someone wants you to kind of learn it, or you want to go and figure it out, and that's exciting for you, Salesforce might be a good fit for you. On the opposite side, if someone give you a new cell phone and it's a little bit onerous, it's kind of dreadful, you're maybe anxious about it, you want to put it off and procrastinate, I would pause in moving into Salesforce, because that kind of learning is required on a regular basis. If you find that learning new things is somewhat onerous, then it diminishes your value a bit, because the clients or your stakeholders at the company you might work for, they're all looking to you to be the expert on the platform. And that requires you learning constantly. So that curiosity and that appetite for learning and being invigorating and exciting is a key dimension that I look for those who would be good fits for the Salesforce ecosystem. A second one is, do you like FaceTime or do you like alone time? And this isn't so much whether or not Salesforce would be a good fit. It's also a dimension of where in the Salesforce ecosystem might be a good fit for you. So if you like FaceTime and you like meeting with people, then the roles you might consider are a product owner, a business analyst, an architect. There is also aspects of, project manager, engagement manager. These are all roles that have high levels of FaceTime with clients. The meetings tend to be shorter, and the head down time tends to be shorter as well. The contrast would be whether you like alone time, whether you'd like to have maybe 1 or 2 calls a day, but the rest I'd like to just be head down, working on cool and creative things, solving problems. Okay, this might be a developer. Some aspects of being an architect, especially if you're on the technical architect side, because there are solution architects and business architects that focus on different dimensions. I'd say as we grow, you're going to have kind of a DevOps engineer that might be focused on this. There might be a release manager. There are definitely roles in the Salesforce ecosystem that focus on more head down time. Now, as it relates to whether Salesforce should be good for you, I would bring in the prior point, which is both of these roles, whether they're emphasizing FaceTime or they're emphasizing head down time, they both will have large aspects of learning. And so that aspect of whether you're learning more about the Salesforce platform or you're having to learn other products that relate to the Salesforce platform. So for example, DevOps platforms, you're going to have to learn how they work so you can get your Salesforce work done, or you're going to be engaging with internal projects, stakeholders, with client teams, and you're going to have to learn how their business works and how their process and politics and product and where does their profit come from. You're going to have to learn a lot about what they're doing and what their needs are and what success looks like. That is just part of the role, and so you'd want to bring that in, because whether you like FaceTime or you like alone time, that learning aspect and that curiosity dimension is a key factor. Now let's talk about whether you like working with creative folks, meaning often the sales and revenue generation side of a business is like this. They're always open to new ideas, aspects that would help them grow, help them do more, help them reach more people. These are creative and imaginative teams. So if those kind of people are the ones you like working with, then that's great to know, and you would want to kind of migrate towards the sales side, the revenue generation side of Salesforce products and customers. If you like more, let's call it guarded, where people are dealing with fixed processes, they're dealing with very consistent programs and procedures, and there's not a lot of creativity in that. I'm not looking to have new ideas and new ways of doing things. I need to continue doing things the way I have been. Maybe I can improve some small elements. Maybe I can do more with the same effort. Maybe I can automate some things, but I need to do things largely the same. So these would be examples of working with finance departments, accounting departments, often compliance or legal departments. These elements also exist, but they're less prevalent in the Salesforce ecosystem. The most prevalent aspects are on the growth side of the house, which is where Salesforce began as a sales-oriented product. Certainly, there are elements that are making inroads, project management, accounting. These dimensions are growing, but they're a minority. And if you like working with them, you'd want to migrate to those aspects and those products to see if it might be a good fit for you. And also thinking about the flexibility that Salesforce offers. I can work from anywhere. I can often work at many different hours of the day when I'm not meeting with my stakeholders. An aspect that needs to be considered there is your motivation style. Many people are very motivated by being in the office. They love the interaction with people, the aspect of having meetings or potentially having someone walk into your office is very motivating to make sure you stay focused and get your work done. When you go home and no one is going to be walking into your office, there's no meeting that you're going to have to walk into today, those elements can sometimes lead to procrastination, distraction, right? You have YouTube available to you on your computer there anytime you like. And so you want to think through what kind of person you are, because if you're not determined in your motivation style, if you're not self-motivated, then having a remote gig might be very, very tough. And you might have to set up some structure to make it possible. I've seen people change and adjust and add a few dimensions that help their ability to do this. But you want to think through these concerns, because it's not something that will change about you. Typically, people are wired this way, and they can offer a few things to support and complement the way they are, but you'll want to think through that. And I find that those who are able to live by their schedule, whether they're in the office or remote, but are motivated to both keep their schedule up to date and contemporaneous, as well as use it as an accountability device, are those that are very, very well equipped for the Salesforce ecosystem. If that's not you, there's many, many other roles, and that might be in Salesforce as well, but I find that because you're focused on leading projects and leading components of projects, it's very important to be determined and leverage your own internal self-motivated aspect. So those are the 4 key paradigms that I typically walk people through in my Experience Academy. And I want to talk a little bit now about some ways to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So if you're looking to enter Salesforce, we talked about how can you toe in and test things out to see if this is really right for you, and how can you what other aspects or skills can you work on so that you can differentiate yourselves with that growing number of Salesforce professionals? If you think about it, right, 100,000, 200,000 Salesforce professionals worldwide, that just seems to be an unbelievable greenfield. The opportunity for me seems just as good as when I entered it 20 plus years ago. And so I have all the enthusiasm in the world about Salesforce and its continued growth. When projects are done right, they achieve unbelievable return for their customers, and I love being a part of that. So a couple elements to think through. One, as you look to toe into this, Trailhead is a great tool. There are great projects and super badges on Trailhead, which give you the feeling of what it's like to actually go through the configuration process, thinking through a little bit of what are some of these projects. That's great. But none of them have the pressure of a real project. The real project has time constraints, it has trade-offs, it has elements that are not described step by step on a Trailhead page. You actually have to think through and make a case for why your way of doing something was better than a potential other way of doing something that maybe the IT person or one of your stakeholders would have done otherwise. And so now you have to make a case and be persuasive in what you're doing and demonstrate it in a way that makes it clearly visible and valuable. I would suggest these are some elements that we do in our Experience Academy. So you can take any given Salesforce Trailhead project or super badge. And I like, for example, the space station is my favorite. I like to take a Star Wars kind of perspective related to it. And I ask people based on their hobbies and preferences and things they like to do. I just say, look, think about on that space station. What are you going to do, right? Like maybe you love hiking and so you want to do spacewalks. Great. Customize that app on the space station to do spacewalks. Think through the process of what would you need to do spacewalks. Well, certainly you have equipment and you have to have a schedule and you possibly have to have tour guides that are going to take people out there. You probably have to have some maintenance and repairs on the equipment. You got to clean the equipment when it comes back. There's probably some checklists. You can see where this is going. We use the preferences and hobbies, those affinities that you have, and apply it to trying to figure out a solution to a business or an activity that would utilize Salesforce to solve. And so you go through the process of thinking through what that solution would be and how can Salesforce complement that, what kind of objects, what kind of processes can help to facilitate that. And you're essentially extending an existing Salesforce Trailhead project to now build something that is uniquely from you. Add to that some accountability where maybe you have a friend who is in Salesforce or a friend who is supporting your career goals, and make yourself a deadline and say, hey, I want to demo this to you, next Thursday. And you put that on your calendar, and now you're working towards a deadline, and you're going to have a demo on that Thursday, and you're going to get feedback on whether that person understands the story you're telling, and whether you're using that using that software that you've configured in Salesforce as a visual aid in your storytelling. And that can be extended. You can start, for example, on that space station app, and you build out spacewalks as an element. Well, what happens, for example, if you have to rent equipment, or you have to have equipment delivered by a spaceship, or you have to get the equipment disposed of and you have to deal with inventory, or people are going to pay to take the spacewalks. What happens if you have to go out and have work orders to have aspects outside that facilitate the spacewalks? Maybe there's a platform, right? I mean, you can just be as creative as you want, but you can start to see where the dimensions of this grow, where now you have potentially commerce dimensions. You have dimensions around field service. You have dimensions around inventory, possibly accounting. You can take this wherever you'd like to go, but the key is we learn best under duress. And so trying to create a little bit of pressure for yourself to see whether you like this, whether you like the idea of having a deadline, of being forced to tell a story in front of another person, to do a little what feels like public speaking, and to tell a story using software that has a lot of your decision making inside of it, and where someone else might push back and think that there was a better way to do that, or that didn't make a lot of sense to me. That's a great test to see if this is a great environment and whether this is something you would want to take and leverage as a career choice, because that experience will happen all the time, whether it's just internal as you begin as like a junior business analyst, or ongoing as you start to have direct face time with clients. This kind of feedback and people poking holes in your solution and finding other competing priorities that might need to be considered, that is just commonplace. And so that needs to be something that you would welcome, and that you like the criticism, and that you like being able to improve it and iterate on it and do it better again and again. So that's an aspect that I use a lot, works very well, and I recommend you also do that. So to summarize, certainly the Salesforce future looks great, but there is going to be a lot of competition because more and more people are getting certified. Salesforce gave away at least 2 AI certifications to really try and skill up in that area. As I saw a report last week that said that 80% of businesses think that AI needs to be part of their business, but only 5% of teams really knew how to execute and how to do something to enable that in their business. And so that's an opportunity for us. I would also suggest that as you think about competing against other Salesforce professionals for these roles, I would recommend that you look at why projects fail and that you work on shoring up those skills. And what you'll find in the data is that some estimates are that up to 85 or 95% of projects, technical projects across the board, not just with Salesforce, but in similar veins, they fail for non-technical reasons. Things like leadership, communication, managing expectations, dealing with conflict, understanding how to parking lot items and manage scope, understanding who to include and where from the stakeholder team to make sure you have good ownership and buy-in. These aspects are not things that you're going to learn on Trailhead. Certainly there are some great business analysts and user experience trails on Trailhead, but you're going to need to shore up those elements of what I call intangible soft skills, because in my opinion, it's the soft skills that bring the hard money. And I want you to really be successful in that. So if you want more on that, you can certainly check out peoplefirstmethod.com. There are other aspects that you can look at, but those are going to be the dimensions, in my opinion, that are going to help you rise in the Salesforce echelon. If you think about a typical Salesforce project that has a business analyst, an architect, a developer, who are the most valuable people on that project? Are they the people who can do the technical chops, or are they the people who can interface with the client, manage expectations, organize the work, deliver it back, and make it visible and valuable to the client? That is my argument. I believe the most valuable are not the technical professionals, but are those who have intangible soft skills that are excellent. And that is a way for you to push out your other competitors and demonstrate that you not only have the Salesforce chops or can go get and learn the Salesforce aspects that you need to, because the platform is changing all the time. And there's lots and lots of horizontal width now to the Salesforce platform across various different clouds, growing with AI. But you can deliver and facilitate a meeting, separate signal from noise, and be very confident in delivering back to the client, confirming what it is that you heard. Those are the aspects that are going to make you really succeed. And so I hope this has been useful for you as you evaluate your own Salesforce career. I wish you best of success, and if there's anything I can do to help, please reach out, and please subscribe, please share it with a friend, and thank you for listening.